Marvel Cinematic Universe isn't doing too well. It is at the very brink of collapse, and this was made even more clear by the recent Fantastic Four movie, which really did flop. When you look at the numbers and how much money it actually made at the box office, it's being comparable right now to Ant-Man, the original first Ant-Man movie, and that is utterly terrible for a movie that was supposed to bring the hype back towards Avengers. This can be really shown when you look at how Captain Marvel, a movie that people really didn't actually like that much, but that movie did incredibly well at the box. I was making $1 billion as it was basically a building block towards the overall Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame movies. So basically, the Marvel Universe, the MCU, is right now about to fall apart. And the question that keeps getting asked amongst people who still care about it is basically, can the Marvel Cinematic Universe, can the MCU be saved? And the answer to that question is actually really hard to get, because there are actually two questions within that question. Two questions within it are, will it be saved, and how can it be saved? Now, I'm going to focus on the first one. How can the Marvel Cinematic Universe be saved? There are three things I think that they could do to save the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Three things that can potentially bring it back towards its former glory. But before we get into all that, I just want to say welcome back, Tiger Back. It is I, the Black Tiger, back with another video, back to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, and how we can possibly save the MCU and bring it back to its former glory. Let's first define what save means. To save the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm not talking about the universe itself being back to its former glory in several different ways. I'm not talking about reaching the exact heights of Avengers Infinity War. I'm talking about getting us in a better state, because ultimately speaking, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not doing well. Some people, will really quibble about the state of the universe, and the state of the universe, from what I can tell, is that it is dying. It has been placed in the coffin. The coffin has been put 6 feet underground, and dirt is beginning to be pushed onto the coffin. So in order to get out of this situation, in order to rise back up and be healthy again, essentially, what we're asking for, it takes a lot of work. You're going to have to, again, get out of the coffin, get through all the dirt, and climb out the hole. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I think there are three things that can get that to that state, to the point where these movies are making a good deal of money, to the point where they're not necessarily the biggest cultural, thing. They're not necessarily dominating the cultural zeitgeist, but at the very least, they are still well talked about, and the normie people still tend to watch them. With that all said, let's go on to the number one thing. Now, at number one of the things that can actually change up the universe, things that can bring the Marvel Universe back, I think, is the reintroduction of aura. Well, now, what is aura? Aura is something really cool or epic that is done, basically making these characters cool again. That is something that has completely fallen off in recent years. For some reason, most of the recent characters have not been cool in any way, shape, or form. And part of them not being cool has to do with many different other factors, but that would be the main thing I think that they should put in charge. They should put the idea of being these characters have to be cool. They have to be memorable, but they also, again, have to be cool. Being cool makes characters memorable. There are all types of movies and shows in which the characters themselves may not be the deepest characters, they may not have the best character arcs, but if they're cool, if they do cool things that they have, or if the camera pans on a certain way, or if they do a certain cool thing, if they have a certain good one-liner after doing something that's actually impressive, people like them. Pirates of the Caribbean is a franchise that really worked off of the aura of the main characters. The main characters were cool, they were confident, they did cool things, and thus people wanted to continue watching those movies. So that's one thing they have to add in there. If I were to say a bullet point that every single Marvel movie should be having to reach, instead of talking about humor or comedy, which those are important things, don't get me wrong, I would say first and foremost, we have to make sure that all of our characters, specifically our main characters, side characters, major side characters, and the villain have aura once again. Let them do cool things. Let them be great and powerful heroes. And I'll mention this one last thing, and that is that if you look at the old Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, look at the original Phase 1, even Phase 2 things, there was usually what you would call the superhero moment, which these superheroes would do something that's kind of cool. They would fight a single person by themselves. They would defeat a group of people by themselves. Great examples of this are the Iron Man. In Iron Man 1, you have the scene where he fights the terrorists, defeats the whole group by himself, dodges a tank blast with ease, shoots it, blows it up, walks away as the explosion goes on. Epic stuff. Winter Soldier, you had Captain America drop down onto a ship, beat up all the terrorists there, take on the guy, I forget his name, but take on Vetrok the Leaper, that's his name, and defeat him one-on-one, putting the shield down and defeating the guy just pure hand-to-hand. So there are these moments that happen in these movies to make these characters feel cool, and you have to bring that back if you want the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, to do well in the future. So that's the first thing, and the second thing is kind of related to that. The second thing that is so very important to add back into the MCU is you need to add back in spectacle. See, the thing is, when it comes to watching movies in the theaters, which is what this is about getting the box office numbers back in place, you need to give people something worth coming to theaters over. Now, this has been done in other movies, other top box office things pretty often. What you usually see is that they add in either impressive action, impressive CGI, but also just impressive sets, impressive things. So you need to make the camera work better to make things more impressive. You need to linger on the environment after you make really cool environments and let the camera linger on them. You need to make sure the score is more grandiose and massive in order to actually make the environments pop. You need to do more things to make the spectacle happen. Great examples of spectacle saving the overall movies are stuff like Aquaman. Aquaman, the first movie, 2018, made $1 billion at the box office. And the story wasn't great. The story wasn't amazing. It was a solid story, a fairly okay story, but what really happened is that the spectacle was so amazing. You had Atlantis looking absolutely beautiful. You had the characters looking nice. You had the colors really popped in all the characters' suits and the environments. And there were so many different cool elements just of the world itself that made people want to see it in theaters. The same thing goes for Avatar. Both those movies, Avatar the first one and Avatar Way of Water, those are movies in which the colors and the world itself just pops so much that people want to watch it. I think people have to really look into that. They have to really look into making sure that these worlds pop. A lot of the Marvel movies recently have been so gray. They've been so drab. They've just been so boring. They feel like TV movies. They're not really impressive in any way, shape, or form, visually speaking. Now, there are some impressive shots here and there. And I understand that, again, you might have certain styles for certain movies, that you may want to make things more grungy for specific movies, but there has to be a bit of cinematic lighting, a bit of cinematic excellence to put in here, because I think without that, people don't want to see these movies in theaters, whether it be just switching up certain things in the color grading, whether it be actually letting the camera linger on environments longer. You have to bring back the spectacle to superhero movies. Simply letting someone walk into the room and the crowd claps for them or whatever, those little scenes, which again even James Gunn made fun of, that doesn't work anymore. You're gonna have to do more. You're gonna have to do bigger. You have to be better. I think that's something that the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, really has to focus on. I think they focus on that, they'll be again half of the way there into making the universe big again. They can get this there. They just have to do that. Bring back the spectacle. Let that happen. Let us actually see this world. Let it be beautiful. I think they'll be again close to getting back to the top, just as Avatar did before them, just as Aquaman did, and other movies like that. And on to the last thing that the Marvel Cinematic Universe needs to implement in its movies, needs to really focus on, is the action. Honestly, I talked about this in a previous video, I think it was 3 things that anime does right and manga does right, while comics get wrong. And the purpose I talked about was action. Action should be the main thing for these movies. Superhero movies are action movies first and foremost, which means that the action should be great. I made a point in those videos, or at least in the comments of those videos, that We had great action movies, great superhero action in the past, especially from the old cartoons. But again, the problem is that those cartoons are older. Things like Man of Steel had great action, but again, that's older. You need to get the action back. Within the last like 5 years, or since like COVID, and even before that, to be honest, a little bit, Marvel's action was starting to falter. And then again, since COVID, it just fell apart. Like the action that are in those different TV shows, within the movies, they just doesn't really cut it. It's just all right. Nothing actually memorable, nothing that actually gets you back into theaters. I remember when it was Winter Soldier, and if anyone talked about Winter Soldier, I talked about it to my friends, I talked about it to my family. When they talk about Winter Soldier, they're always talking about those big, massive, action-packed moments. They talk about the aforementioned fight scene on the boat, that whole situation, that whole save the hostages situation that they had on the boat. They talk about Captain America escaping for S.H.I.E.L.D. Something that they often say is that Captain America took down an entire Quinjet with just a shield. They always love talking about how cool that was, and they need to do that again within the newest movies. They need to add back action, but not just go a little bit of action, go crazy with the action, make it huge, make it massive. It kind of goes into the other 2 points. All 3 points kind of roll in together as one major point, because if you have awesome characters and you have spectacle and you have great action, you're going to have a great movie on your hands, at least a very well loved movie on your hands, even if it doesn't have the best characters, even if it doesn't have the best arcs for different characters, the best writing. As long as the action is there, as long as the spectacle is there, as long as the characters being really cool, having aura is there, then people are going to come and watch it. A great example of just pure action selling a franchise is the Transformers franchise. Transformers franchise within the movies is just pure action. It's about big robots fighting each other, and it sells. It sells tickets. See the same thing from things like Jurassic World, the newer Jurassic Park movies. Those movies are action-based, and they do a really good job with that. For the most part, there's some terrible action within those movies, but ultimately speaking, they usually do a solid job of having action in them, so people come watch them. Godzilla versus Kong, and the Kong Godzilla universe situation, that whole situation, people love seeing giant, monsters fight. They come to watch it, and it makes money. So that's something that the Marvel, the MCU needs to really focus on. James Gunn, Superman, and those universes should focus on that as well. But ultimately speaking, we're focusing on Marvel here and how to save those franchises. They gotta focus on getting the action back on par, making sure the action, the spectacle, all those things are great together. And the thing is, the action, if you have great action, it opens up opportunities for the other 2 things. Great action can mean great spectacle. Those things can go hand in hand. Same thing goes with characters being cool. Characters having these great aura moments, part of that is part of the action itself. They can kind of all complement each other to make a great thing. I think if you did that alone, action, aura, and finally having actual, spectacles, action that actually has spectacle to it, then you get out of there. You'd blow it right out the park. You'd be back on your feet. You would have easily got out the coffin, brushed off the dirt, and climbed out of the grave. I think those are the 3 things that if the Marvel Cinematic Universe really focus on those things. By that, I mean like those things need to be in every single movie, every single project needs to have those 3 things, or else we're not making it. If they focus on those 3 things, I think they'd be back on top within a couple of days, honestly. I don't think it would take them that long to get themselves back to the top. You'd have people talking about them again. People would watch the movies, not just to see the characters. Even if the characters and the writing isn't on par, they'd still come see those movies just to see the action. That's so very important. So anyway, that's what I want to say. I think the action, again, action, spectacle, aura. Add those 3 things in, Marvel Cinematic Universe will be back on top. That is how you fix the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That said, there is only part of the overall equation. The question originally is, can the Marvel Cinematic Universe be saved? And the answer, of course, I answered how it can be saved. So that means that it can be saved. But the bigger question is, within that question is, will it be saved? Will they do that? And I'll have to make another video later on explaining about why I think that they will or will not. I think the answer to that question may surprise you as far as whether or not they will do that. But that's for another video. For this video, it's about to be over. So I just want to thank you guys. Like, subscribe for the content, do all that YouTube jazz. Comment down below if you think there are other things that they could do to fix the universe that would be more effective than those first three. I think there are other things that can be done, different writing, different things like that can fix up these characters. I've been actually trying to fix these characters myself in different videos, but I think that those three things, action, spectacle, aura, I think those things would go so far to fixing most of these characters than even good writing would. But again, that's just my opinion. Comment down below if you guys agree or disagree with me down there. Like and subscribe for further content. Again, those really help the algorithm push me, so I would hope you guys would do that. If you like this video, you may like my video over here of me breaking down and trying to fix Ironheart, or you may like my video over here, which is a review of the Superman movie. Either one doesn't really matter. Thank you guys for coming around and helping me on this YouTube journey. And until next time, Tiger Pack, stay ferocious.
Dancing through a dream underneath the stars, laughing till the morning comes.